Hi, I'm Shoestring Jane. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things thrifty, frugal and money saving. Excuse the hair, I've just been outside and I think I've been I look a bit windswept. It's a sunny day today here in Essex, but it's also quite windy. I am feeling a little stressed. We still don't have a potential exchange date on our house. As you can see, every single time I do a video, I've got boxes and boxes behind me, and I am surrounded by boxes as well. We had hoped for the 28th of October. It looks like that is just not going to be happening. So maybe the week after rather. So I'm going to have to tell the removal men in a minute that it doesn't look like it's going to happen that week. It's very frustrating, especially as we're not the ones that's holding anything up, but it's out of our control, isn't it? So we've had a couple of days this week where, well, I particularly felt extremely stressed, just so frustrated, and because it was kind of close to the wire, it's if this happens, if the mortgage offers come in for our purchases by such and such a day, then you could do it, but then you have up to 5 working days for their money to come in, and it's all if, and it's the 8th day today, 8 working days we've waited for the revised mortgage offer for our purchasers and somebody higher up in the chain, and it's not happened. So what can you do? I can't even drink because it's bad for my arthritis and I've given it up. So it's very frustrating. But as I say, there's not a lot we can do except just kind of try and be ready. I think I almost feel a bit better knowing it's not going to be the 28th, because now I can stop kind of sitting on the edge of my seat thinking, is it going to be, is it going to be, is it going to be? And it's not. So anyway, one day I will do a video. I won't be surrounded by boxes and I will be in our new house. You've got to hang on to that thought. Please hang on to that thought for me. Anyway, in the meantime, I have been cleaning out one of the freezers. We've got a fridge freezer, a little freezer below the fridge, and a bigger freezer. And we use both because we grow some stuff in the garden, which we then freeze to use throughout the year. I freeze lots of things like leftovers and bread ends and that kind of thing as well. So I think, although obviously it costs money to run a freezer, it actually saves money overall. And it's interesting now that I've gone just to the little half a freezer, the one below the fridge, that I keep thinking, oh, I'll just go and get some whatever out of the freezer, and it's not in there because I've gradually been using it up and, you know, finishing it off. So I've got some soup on now, which I'm just defrosting, which was in the freezer. I'm gradually working through all of that. But if you are still using your freezers, then they are brilliant, as I say, to stop food waste. I think they are anyway. And I think that they enable you to really make the best of your leftovers. So if, for example, you have a leftover whole portion of something, then that's a ready meal, isn't it? Right there. You can defrost it ideally, or defrost it in your microwave when you get home from work, but that obviously uses more power and takes more time. But if you think, well, actually, I'm not going to have a lot of time after work tonight, I'll take something out of the freezer this morning, it's all ready for you, then that is a lot cheaper than actually buying some of those ready meals you can get, and also a lot healthier because you know what you've put in it. It's not full of preservatives. So I like that. I sometimes deliberately cook too much. I batch cook so that I can portion the leftovers up, and then for those nights when we're a bit tired or we're a bit busy, we know there's something that's easy to make from the freezer. I also put in any yellow sticker bargains. So if I get reduced meat, fish, reduced fresh fruit and vegetables, sometimes I know I'm not going to be able to use in time, that kind of thing will go in the freezer. Even because I like making soup, what I freeze a lot of is just little bits of mashed potato, little bits of cooked vegetables, things that aren't really enough. Maybe you just don't want any more, but they're not really enough to take across for the next day's meals. But if you just keep an old margarine or an ice cream tub in the freezer, you can just add them in once they're cold. And when you've got enough, you can use that as a basis of a really good soup. And the other thing I freeze is bones. if we have a roast, if we have roast chicken, or very rarely we might have a bit of roast beef on the bone or something like that. And I would always keep the bones, freeze them, and when I have enough, I will make a batch of stock. So usually I make poultry stock. When I make beef stock, beef broth, I usually go to the butcher specially and get bones for that. But if he gives me too many to put in my slow cooker all in one go, then the rest will go in the freezer and I'll use them later. So I find that's really, really helpful for that kind of thing. Bread ends is another thing. Justin really likes bread pudding. I love bread pudding as well, actually, but I'm not eating gluten, sadly. I made a big batch, though. I was very good. I made a massive batch when I was defrosting the other freezer so that I could use up all those bread ends that I'd collected, and I only had 2 pieces. Still had some. This is the problem, the danger of actually making bread pudding. It smells so delicious. I can't just leave it. So, but Justin ate most of it, took some for his brother and his mum, and meant that the bread ends didn't get wasted. I also whiz up bread ends for breadcrumbs sometimes. So if I know that I'm going to be using breadcrumbs for a recipe, then I'll whiz up a bag of those. Again, as I say, at the moment I'm not eating gluten, so I'm not going to be doing that going forward very much, although I'm still cooking for other people, so I will sometimes keep them. When the kids were small, if we had leftover little fromage frais or yoghurts, I would freeze those. Sometimes the little pots, the petit filou type ones, I would literally stick a lolly stick in those, stick them in the freezer, and then when they wanted a lolly, they could have a frozen yoghurt lolly. So that's good. That's good as well, because sometimes you find those kind of things on offer or reduced, don't you? And you don't want to waste them. You can always freeze leftover double cream as well, so that can be used for a myriad of recipes and to just make a nice creamy sauce or dessert and that kind of thing. So I quite like putting cream into curries. So if I've got a little bit of cream, I can defrost that, put it in a curry. Or if I open a can of coconut milk and don't use it all in one go, it freezes really well. I thought, well, is that going to freeze? Don't know. Just try it. Froze it, defrosted it. It was brilliant. It was perfect. You wouldn't know. And that I do find is the case sometimes. I'll make a recipe and I only need half a can of coconut milk. So using your freezer is a really, really good way to not waste food and to make the best of any bargains that you find, any homegrown produce. But I also think about food generally, and I've said this in other videos, just planning, a bit of planning around food can save food waste and save you some money as well. So I always shop with a list. I would never go shopping without a list. Otherwise, you end up with half a ton of pasta that you didn't need and no toilet roll and eggs and things that you did need. So shopping without a list is really dangerous. And also, if you go in really blinkered because you're trying to save money and you really stick to your list, then again, you save money. You don't do those impulse purchases that, well, I'm inclined to them. I don't know about anybody else. But if I know that I've got a good plan, I've made a meal plan, I have a good plan for the week, and I have everything that I need on my list, then I am much less likely to give in to those impulse purchases because I know I don't need them. So never go shopping hungry is the other thing to help you not impulse purchase food. It really is a thing. If you go shopping and you're starving, suddenly all of those bars of chocolate and things on offer at the end of aisles and everything all look doubly delicious, don't they? And it's so tempting to then just spend your money on a lot of junk food that you don't really need, and it's not good for your waistline, let alone your bank balance. So I tend, when I do buy things, if I find yellow sticker things, and it means that I'm probably not going to eat them until they're a couple of days over their best before date, or even their used by date actually for fresh things, I'll quite often not take any notice of them. Don't recommend this though, because if I do recommend it and you do it and you get food poisoning, you can sue me. Don't recommend this. I'm just saying this is what I do sometimes. So hummus, I find particularly, will last a lot longer, as long as it's kept cold, a lot longer than they tell you it will, or than the use by date will suggest. But that's the case with cheese and all sorts. Cheese particularly, I think it really is random, because cheese is a matured product, isn't it? And it lasts for a long time. It takes a long time to get to the point where you can use it. So I think as long as you keep it wrapped, if you keep it open in your fridge, it's going to be horrible and go crispy and crusty. But if you keep it wrapped, it lasts a long time, and you can always grate that up and freeze it as well if you're not going to use cheese in time. So there's lots of things like that. I mean, vegetables, I remember, I've said this, I think I might have mentioned this before, one of my lodgers had thrown into our food waste bin a whole pack of carrots. And I said to her, why have you thrown these carrots away? They're perfectly good. And she said, well, they were beyond the best before date. And I said to her, look, they're perfectly fine. They're good, aren't they? They are perfect. You can see they're not even blemished. They've got no black marks on them. Ignore best before dates on things like carrots, where you can see that they're absolutely fine. Those carrots came out, got washed, and I used them. I did the same with a couple of peppers that she threw in there. Absolutely perfect. Not a wrinkle on them. Absolutely fine. So if I can't use peppers, I will chop those up. They freeze really well, and then if you freeze them quite flat, you can just pull out the amount that you want to use. So they go into stir fries and things like a tomato sauce, bolognese sauce, that kind of thing. So what else do I do to stop food waste? I measure out things like rice and pasta because it's very easy to cook far too much of those. They don't look like very much at all, particularly rice when you put it in the pan. So you think, oh, it's not going to be enough, I'll chuck a bit more on. But actually, if you measure out, I tend to go for about 3 to 4 ounces, depending on how hungry we are. But the point is that you don't then waste it, you only cook what you need. If you are knowing that you're going to need leftovers, then yeah, cook more, but then cook the amount more that you need. I do freeze rice sometimes. If I do accidentally cook a little bit more or decide I'm not that hungry after all, I will freeze rice. Pasta I don't think freezes very well when it's cooked, when it's been properly cooked. If you undercooked it and froze it, it'll probably be okay. But as long as the rice is defrosted thoroughly and thoroughly reheated, it's safe. I've always found it safe. I know people are funny around cooked rice, but I've never really had a problem with it. I just think with any food, to me, not only does it make no sense financially to throw things away, it's bad for the environment, and it seems immoral to chuck perfectly good food away when there are people in the world who are starving, who would really appreciate the food that you're chucking in the bin. It feels like we just take our good fortune for granted sometimes in throwing things away, and I try not to do that. So there's always lots of things you can do. You know, if you just think, what have I got? You put in your ingredient, put it in the internet, and it will just tell you what you can make with it. So you could put recipe using bread ends, or that kind of thing. Recipe using eggs because you've got too many eggs. There's always loads of recipes that you can make. I believe you can actually freeze eggs. I've frozen egg yolks before, but not the whole egg, so I'm not sure about the whole egg. But I have frozen tortilla, so I've made like a big thick omelette and frozen that, and that was really fine. I was absolutely amazed that was good. So have a real good look through the recipes that you can find on the internet for how to use leftovers before you chuck things away, and then you won't be wasting food. Another place you can look for inspiration for how not to waste food is the Love Food Hate Waste website that has various recipes and tells you how to store your leftovers, so that's worth checking out too. I'll leave the link in the description box below. So all we really have in the freezer at the moment is some frozen peas. I think we've got some frozen sweet corn. We've got a couple of portions of soup, which I will use this week. What else do we have? Got some meat, but that's Archie's meat. And we've got some frozen fish, because I've bought frozen fish when I went the other day, white fish, and a couple of portions of salmon. But they'll get used this week. So there's very little in there now. It makes me feel slightly insecure to have such an empty freezer, but I've still got cupboards full of food which I've got to sort and pack at some point if we ever get a moving date. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that. I was just going through the freezer, looking at what we've got, and thought I would do a little chat about, leftovers, using leftovers, freezing them, and just not wasting food generally. So what would you say is your number one tip not to waste food? What is the thing that's made the most difference to you with saving money on your groceries? I would love to hear that in the description box below, and so we can share. I'm sorry this is quite a short video. I am off to do some more packing now, but I will be back soon in a few days. So if you liked this video, give me the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.